Isa Wayne stopped mid-sentence and looked directly at the interviewer. People think they knew my father, she said. They saw him on screen, read about him in magazines. They thought they
Magazines. They thought they understood who he was. The interviewer waited. This documentary about John Wayne's personal life had already revealed several surprises, but something in Isa's expression suggested she was about to share something bigger. There was something he did every single night, Isa continued. Something nobody outside our family knew about until now. What was it? A prayer. The same prayer. Every night for as long as I can remember. The camera operator leaned forward slightly, adjusting focus. The interviewer's pen hovered over her notepad. Can you tell us what he prayed? Isa's eyes filled with tears. She'd been talking about her father for 2 hours without breaking down. But this was different. I need to explain something first, she said. Or you won't understand why it mattered. Why it broke my heart every time I heard it. Isa was 7 years old when she first heard the prayer. Their house in Newport Beach had long hallways and thick doors. But sound traveled at night when everything was quiet. Isa's bedroom was next to her parents' room, separated by a shared bathroom. She'd gotten up for water. The house was dark except for a light under her parents' door. That's when she heard her father's voice. John Wayne wasn't praying loudly. His voice was barely above a whisper. But in the silence of the house, Isa could hear every word. She stood frozen in the hallway, glass of water in her hand, listening. The prayer wasn't long. Maybe 30 seconds. But the way her father said it, the weight in his voice, made 7-year-old Isa understand that something important was happening. When he finished, there was silence. Then she heard her mother's voice, soft and sad. Duke, you don't have to carry all of that. Yes, I do, her father replied. Isa crept back to bed, confused and troubled by something she couldn't name. She didn't sleep well that night. The next morning at breakfast, her father was the same as always, joking with her brothers, reading the newspaper, drinking his coffee, like nothing had happened. But Isa kept watching him, wondering about the man she'd heard praying in the dark. Over the next few weeks, Isa started paying attention. Every night around 10 o'clock, her father would go to his room. She'd hear the door close, and if she listened carefully, if she timed her trip to the bathroom just right, she could hear that prayer again, the same words, the same tone. Every single night. Isa didn't tell her brothers. At 7, she understood instinctively that what she was hearing wasn't meant for children, wasn't meant for anyone, really, except God and her mother. But she couldn't stop listening. One night, her older brother, Patrick, caught her standing in the hallway. What are you doing? Nothing. Getting water. Patrick looked at her suspiciously. You get water every night now?
I get thirsty.
He shrugged and went to his own room. But Isa noticed he was watching her more carefully after that. She had to be more careful, had to find other ways to hear the prayer without being obvious. But why did she need to hear it? What was driving this obsession? Years later, Isa would understand. She was hearing something real. In a house full of movie star performances, press releases, and public images, that prayer was the only thing that felt completely honest. Isa waited until she was 12 to ask her mother about it. They were alone in the kitchen. Her father was on location filming. Her brothers were at school. It was one of those rare quiet moments when Isa and her mother could talk without interruption. Mom, why does Dad pray every night? Her mother's hands stopped moving. She'd been chopping vegetables for dinner. The knife stayed suspended in air for a moment before she set it down carefully. What do you mean? I've heard him. For years. The same prayer every night. Her mother sat down at the kitchen table, gestured for Isa to sit across from her. How long have you been listening? Since I was 7. Her mother closed her eyes briefly. That's 5 years of standing in hallways, of pretending to get water. I'm sorry. I needed to understand. Understand what? Isa struggled to find words. Why he sounds so sad when he prays. Dad's never sad in real life. He's always strong, always sure of himself. But when he prays, he sounds like a different person. Her mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said something. Isa never forgot. The man you see during the day is the man your father built. The man he needed to become. But the man who prays at night, That's who your father really is. Her mother explained it like this. John Wayne carried weight nobody saw, the public image. The expectation of always being strong, always being right, always being the hero. People need him to be John Wayne, her mother said. They need him to be tough and unshakable. They write him letters when they're scared. When the country feels unstable, they need to believe someone is strong enough to handle anything. But that's not real. No, it's not. Your father is strong, but he's also human. He makes mistakes. He has doubts. He carries regrets. What regrets? Her mother hesitated. That's not my story to tell. But the prayer, that's where he puts all the things he can't say during the day. All the weight he carries. Asa absorbed this. Does it help, the prayer? I think it keeps him from breaking. The weight would crush him if he had nowhere to put it down. Can you tell me what he prays? Her mother shook her head. That's between him and God. And when the time is right, if he wants you to know, he'll tell you himself. But John Wayne never told his daughter the words to that prayer. Not when she was 12. Not when she was 20. Not when she was 30. It wasn't until he was dying that Asa finally learned what her father had been saying every night for decades. John Wayne was diagnosed with stomach cancer in January. The family knew before the public did. Knew it was bad. Knew the odds were against him. Asa was 33 years old, married with her own children. But when she got the call from her mother, she felt 7 years old again. Small and scared in a hallway, listening to her father's voice in the dark, she flew to Newport Beach immediately. Her father looked smaller than she remembered. The cancer and treatments had taken weight off him. But his eyes were still sharp, still determined. Don't look at me like I'm dying, he said, when she walked into his room. I'm not. Yes, you are. Everyone is. I can see it. Asaya sat beside his bed. Are you scared? He was quiet for a moment. Then, yeah, I'm scared. It was the first time she'd ever heard him admit to fear. But I've been scared before, he continued. This isn't new, just bigger. What are you scared of? Lots of things. Running out of time. Leaving your mother alone. Not being here to see my grandkids grow up. He looked at her. Being forgotten. Nobody's going to forget you, Dad. Not the movies. Not John Wayne the actor. But me, the actual person. That gets forgotten. That's what scares me. As the cancer progressed, John Wayne spent more time in the hospital. Asa visited as often as she could. Sometimes her father was alert and talkative. Other times he was too weak or medicated to do more than squeeze her hand. One night in April, Isa stayed late. Her mother had gone home to rest. The nurses had finished their rounds. The hospital was quiet. Isa sat in a chair beside her father's bed, reading a magazine by the dim light of the bedside lamp. That's when she heard it. Her father's voice, barely above a whisper, saying the prayer. The same prayer she'd heard through walls and doors for 26 years. But now she was in the room. Now there was nothing between her and the words. Isa set down her magazine and listened. God, help me remember who I really am when everyone else forgets. Help me be honest when the world wants me to lie. Forgive me for the times I chose the image over the truth. Forgive me for the people I hurt, trying to be what they needed instead of what I was. Keep my family safe from the poison of this life. Help them see me clearly, not the movies, not the myth, just the man, and when I'm gone, let them remember I tried. Let them know I loved them more than the career, the fame, all of it. Help me be brave enough to be weak, strong enough to ask for help, human enough to fail, and when it's over, judge me not by what I pretended to be, but by what I really was. Amen. Isa's hands shook. Tears ran down her face. Her father opened his eyes and saw her crying. You heard. Yes. How long have you known about the prayer? Since I was 7. He smiled weakly. You always were too curious for your own good. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because you weren't supposed to hear it. Nobody was. It wasn't for other people. Then why are you letting me hear it now? Her father shifted in the hospital bed, wincing at the movement. Because I'm dying. And when I'm gone, I want someone to know the truth. Not the version Hollywood sells, not the version I sold myself for 40 years. The real truth. What truth is that? That I spent my whole life pretending to be strong, and every night I had to confess that I wasn't. That it was all performance. That underneath the costume, I was just a man trying not to drown. Over the next few weeks, as John Wayne's condition worsened, he and Isa had conversations they'd never had before. He told her about the pressure of being a symbol, of having a country, a whole generation project their ideals onto him. People needed John Wayne to be a certain way, he explained. Tough, conservative, uncompromising. And I gave them that. I became that. But it meant I couldn't be anything else. Couldn't show doubt. Couldn't change my mind. Couldn't be vulnerable. That must have been exhausting. It was killing me long before the cancer did. He told her about the regrets. The marriages that failed because he chose career over family. The movies he made that he knew were terrible but did anyway because it paid well. The political stances he took publicly that he questioned privately. The prayer was the only place I could be honest, he said. The only place I didn't have to perform. Why those specific words? Because those were the things I needed to say. Needed to confess. Every night I'd put on the John Wayne costume and play the role, and every night I'd take it off and remember I was just Duke Morrison from Iowa. Just a man who was scared and fallible and desperate to mean something. Isa held her father's hand. It felt fragile, nothing like the strong hands she remembered from childhood.
You did mean something, Dad. You do mean something.
Maybe, but not for the reasons people think. John Wayne died on June 11th. The funeral was massive. Celebrities, politicians, fans, everyone came to pay respects to an American icon. Isa stood beside her mother and siblings, listening to speeches about her father's legacy, his films, his impact on American culture, his status as a symbol of strength and patriotism. None of them mentioned the prayer. None of them knew about the man who knelt beside his bed every night and confessed his fears and failures to God. That man was private, hidden, known only to his family. After the funeral, Isa's mother pulled her aside. Your father made me promise something before he died. What? He said if you ever wanted to share the prayer, if you ever felt the time was right, you should. He didn't want it to die with him.
Why would he want me to share it?
Because he thought it might help someone else who's drowning under the weight of who they're supposed to be. He wanted them to know even John Wayne needed permission to be human. Isa carried that promise for decades. The documentary interview was Isa's first time publicly discussing the prayer. She was 73 years old. Her father had been dead for over 40 years, but the prayer still made her cry. Why share it now? The interviewer asked. Because I think we need it. Our culture is worse now than it was in my father's time. Everyone performs constantly. Social media, personal branding. Everyone's selling an image of who they're supposed to be. And the prayer? The prayer is permission to stop, to be honest, to admit that the performance is crushing you. Isa wiped her eyes. My father was John Wayne, one of the most famous men in the world. And every night he had to pray for strength to keep being that person. If he needed that, if someone that strong and successful needed to confess his humanity to God every night, then what does that say about the rest of us? The interviewer didn't respond, didn't need to. I think about all the people watching this, Isa continued. All the people performing their own verse of strength, hiding their doubts, terrified to show weakness. And I want them to know even John Wayne did that. Even my father needed to pray for help being human. When the documentary aired, the segment about the prayer went viral. People shared it on social media, wrote articles about it. Religious leaders quoted it in sermons. Therapists recommended it to clients struggling with perfectionism and image management. Isa received thousands of messages. People thanked her for sharing, said the prayer helped them, said knowing John Wayne struggled with the same things they struggled with made them feel less alone. One letter stood out. It was from a man in his 60s who'd served in Vietnam. He'd grown up watching John Wayne movies, had idolized the tough, unbreakable characters her father played. I spent my whole life trying to be that strong, the man wrote, never showing fear, never asking for help. It nearly destroyed me. I wish I'd known that even John Wayne needed to pray for strength to keep the mask on. Maybe I would have taken mine off sooner. Isa kept that letter in her desk drawer. She thought about what her mother had told her when she was 12. The man you see during the day is a man your father built, but the man who prays at night, that's who your father really is. The world had known John Wayne the construction, the image, the symbol. But through that prayer they finally met Duke Morrison, the real man underneath. Asa Wayne died in 2024, 45 years after her father. At her funeral, her children spoke about her life, her career, her advocacy work, her dedication to preserving her father's memory. But they also talked about the prayer, how sharing it had become the most important thing Isa ever did, more important than any movie she'd appeared in or any interview she'd given. Mom believed the prayer was her father's final gift, Isa's daughter said. Not to her, to everyone who ever felt crushed by the weight of who they're supposed to be. After the funeral, several people approached Isa's children, asked if they could have a copy of the prayer written out. They wanted to pray it themselves. One woman explained, "I'm a CEO. Everyone expects me to have all the answers, to never show doubt, to be strong all the time, but I'm exhausted and scared and lonely. This prayer, it gives me permission to admit that, to ask for help being human." A young man said, "I'm an influencer. I know that sounds stupid, but I spend all day performing this perfect version of myself, online. And at night, I hate who I've become. This prayer helps me remember there's someone real under all the performance." They kept coming. More people, more stories, all of them carrying weight they couldn't put down. All of them performing versions of themselves they couldn't maintain. All of them looking for permission to be honest about the cost. John Wayne's prayer gave them that permission. The real power of the prayer wasn't in the words themselves. It was in the revelation that John Wayne, symbol of strength, icon of American masculinity, the Duke himself needed to pray for help every single night. That he struggled with the same things everyone struggles with. That the image was a costume, and underneath it was a man who was scared and fallible and desperately trying to mean something. People needed to know that. Needed to know that if John Wayne couldn't maintain the performance without breaking down every night in prayer, then maybe they didn't have to maintain their own performances either. Maybe it was okay to be weak, to ask for help, to admit the weight was too heavy. Maybe being human was enough. Isa had understood this the first time she heard her father pray through the wall. She was 7 years old and she couldn't articulate it yet. But she knew she was hearing something true in a world full of performance. It took her 66 years to share that truth with the world. But when she finally did, it changed everything. Not because the prayer was magical or particularly eloquent, but because it was honest. Because it revealed that even the strongest among us need help carrying the weight. And that revelation, that simple, profound truth, was John Wayne's real legacy. Not the movies. Not the tough guy image. Not the symbol of American strength. The legacy was this: even heroes need to pray for help being human. That's what Isa Wayne revealed. That's what her father wanted the world to know. And that's why, decades after his death, people still share the prayer, still find comfort in knowing John Wayne needed the same thing they need. Permission to be real. Permission to be weak. Permission to be human. That's what the prayer gave him every night. And through his daughter's courage in sharing it, that's what it still gives to anyone who needs it. The weight we carry doesn't make us weak. Admitting we need help carrying it, that's what makes us strong. John Wayne understood that. Every single night he prayed for the strength to remember it. And now, through his daughter's revelation, we all can too.